Manor Lords was released on PC through Steam and Xbox GamePass in early access in April of 2024. Developed by Slavic Magic and published by Hooded Horse, it started development by a solo developer before the team gradually expanded. I checked out Manor Lords on PC in November of 2024, over 7 months after release, and unfortunately, it's still pretty rough. Manor Lords is part city builder, like SimCity or maybe Age of Empires, and part strategy game similar to a Total War game where you control armies. But many of the game's features are still in development, so it's hard to say what exactly Manor Lords will eventually look and play like when it gets its full release. Let's begin the review like we always do, talking about the graphics and the technicals. Starting with the graphics, Manor Lords was originally developed in Unreal Engine 4 before being upgraded to Unreal Engine 5. That means Manor Lords is a bit of a looker. The environments are lush and detailed, with the landscape going from the green of summer to the reds and browns of fall, the deep snows of winter, and the rain of spring in an endless cycle. The entire game has an overhead perspective, and you can pull out pretty far or zoom in to see each individual villager as they work away at the fields or hunting animals. But from a technical standpoint, Manor Lords has a lot of problems. There are bugs and glitches galore, which is a given for such an early access game, and Manor Lords is early in its early access, despite getting released in April of this year. I had multiple crashes to desktop, ones that hard-locked my system requiring a complete restart. I had audio and visual glitches that would make large sections of the terrain disappear. And then there are the slew of gameplay bugs, like people, animals, and objects disappearing and never returning, affecting my logistics. A lot of this stuff can be forgiven, it's an early access game after all, but there's so much that is still in development and gated off that the features on offer are pretty lacking at the moment. For example, there are only a few buildings available, with multiple goods that you need that can only be traded for, like ale, weapons, and clothing. There are policies and laws that you can enact, but of the over a dozen planned, there are only 2 available right now. Then there are the development trees, which you earn as your settlement grows. There are only a few perks to pick from at the moment, and several are so bugged that they aren't worth getting, like the Deep Mine perk that lets you mine a rich resource deposit endlessly. It just didn't work, and my mine eventually went dry. Overall, you need to know that Manor Lords says it's in early access, it really means that it's just getting out of the gate development-wise. This isn't a typical early access game where a lot of its features are here, they're just in a rough state, and there are maybe a few extra planned. This is the bare bones of a release, and based on the development schedule, it's going to take years before it gets anywhere close to a full release. Let's move on to the gameplay. There are a few game modes to choose from when you start, but only 2 really matter. The first is building a settlement free of AI enemies, bandits, and raiders. This is, in my opinion, the best way to learn how to play the game. There isn't a tutorial level. Instead, you are told what to do in a few text boxes and helpful hints throughout your playthrough. There is a codex which lists all the items, goods, and services you can provide, but most of them are very bare bones or they're missing information entirely. The second option adds raiders and an AI competitor. I'm going to talk mostly about the settlement mode, where you don't have to worry about anything else but making your settlement grow and keeping your people fed and warm. This is the most functionally complete and less frustrating game mode. The goal here is to grow your settlement from 5 families living in tents to a large town. You do this by building homes for your people and upgrading them from level 1 to level 3. In a way, it's very similar to the way the Anno series works, where you need to satisfy the needs of your people before they can level up their homes. In the beginning, you have level 1 houses, where they only need food, warmth from firewood, and a church. But eventually they need multiple varieties of food, clothing, and entertainment from a tavern before you can reach level 3 homes. Each time you reach a milestone, the rank of your village increases and you get a new point to spend on a perk. You can get things like doubling the amount of berries available during the harvesting season, the amount of fish you can get from ponds, the ability to grow apple orchards, a plow for a field, etc. To go along with your town's needs, there's also a requirement to keep your people fed and warm. You need to stockpile goods, and they will tell you when you don't have enough food or firewood to survive the month. During winter, your firewood consumption doubles, and the amount of food you can harvest from things reduces, so you need to plan ahead. Then there are resource deposits in the world, like stone, clay, and iron. They come in deposits with minerals and stone eventually running out, while meat, berries, and fish will replenish over time, provided you didn't harvest them to depletion. This is where the game really shows its lack of options. There aren't many buildings to choose from, and you're often hamstrung by what resources you have available in your area. The map is divided into different sections, and you can't influence anything outside the borders. Eventually, you will need advanced goods and you won't have the resources or the buildings to get it. This is when trade comes into play. You build a trading center and put people to work in it. If you have a rich deposit of some good resource, you can export it for money and spend that surplus on different goods your people want, like ale and clothing. The goal of the growth campaign is to get your town to a certain rank, and to do that, you need level 3 houses. They will want a variety of food, clothing, and firewood, as well as an upgraded church, a well, and the materials to build those houses, which include clay roofing tiles. Initially, it isn't hard to get all that stuff, especially if you have a few good deposits to mine for exports, but it is very time consuming. That isn't a problem in the growth scenario, but it's a major deal in the other 2 scenarios. The second, and really the third scenario, has you facing off against an AI opponent in a race to claim lands using influence or military might. The AI isn't balanced at all, and they will have a huge army throughout your entire playthrough, while you will mostly be stuck with a handful of peasants with sticks. You need to raise an army by getting weapons, shields, and armor, and outfitting the young men in your settlement and sending them off to war. The biggest problem is the fact that you can't make these weapons since you lack the buildings in this early build, so you need to import them. But to import them, you need money, and you need excess people in order to recruit an army. Both take a long time to get, and by the time you do get them, your AI opponent will own most of the map, putting you at a severe disadvantage. The other form of opposition are bandit camps that randomly spawn across the map. They steal goods from your storeroom, so you want to take them out pretty quickly. But the biggest problem by far are the raiders. Depending on the difficulty, the game gives you either a year or 2 years to get ready before they send bandit raiders attacking your settlement. There is no way to prepare in a year. The game just takes too long to get ready. 2 years is already pushing it, but it is doable if you use a bit of creative thinking and know exactly what to focus on. The raiders will attack your settlement in large numbers, kill all your people, burn your houses to the ground, so you need to have your people ready to fight them. Make money as quickly as possible, import those weapons through the trader, and get an army before these raiders attack. When you do get to combat, it is pretty simple. Sort of like a simplified version of Total War. Grab your army and send them to attack. Tactics don't really matter since there isn't much programming for that yet in this early build, but your troops will get tired after a while, so if you run into a battle, make sure you stop beforehand and rest a minute. And that's pretty much it. Build a settlement and fight against an overpowered AI and overpowered raiders. Here's the pros and cons of Manor Lords. For the pros, there are some interesting gameplay concepts here. The idea of building your settlement, making sure you have enough food and fuel to keep your people alive is both fun and immersive. The game looks great, and I'm sure it will get even better as it's optimized. But for the cons, it's super early access. A lot of the features and gameplay elements are currently missing. The AI is extremely overpowered, and combat doesn't work correctly. It's about $40 for 10 hours of content. Sure, you can play the endless mode, but there isn't any reason to expand your village to every edge of the map, since you only have access to a handful of buildings. And that's it for another review. Manor Lords will take you about 10 hours to do everything, making it a pretty limited offering at the moment, especially for the price. My suggestion is to check it out on PC GamePass, or wait a few years for some major updates before paying anything more than $20 or $25. I'm the Casual Console Gamer, and I'll see you all in the next review.